Welcome back, everyone. Before we get started, for those in the room, please make sure your phones are silenced. And just a reminder that we do have a live stream for the session, as well as it being recorded for access after AWS Summit. I'd like to welcome you to the session on Legacy to Leading Edge, HBF's AWS Cloud Transformation. Please join me in welcoming Rachel from AWS and Billy from HBF to share the inspiring journey.
Hello everyone, my name is Rachel Liu. I'm a senior solutions architect with AWS, primarily working with financial services customers. Today we will discuss how insurance companies driving their digital transformation with AWS. From migrating their system, modernizing their infrastructure, to applying cutting-edge technologies. I'm excited to co-present with Billy Martin. Billy is the General Manager of Technology Architecture and Innovation at HBF. Billy will share with us their remarkable journey of digital transformation, where they have migrated and modernized their core insurance system, and now started to innovate using leading-edge technologies like generative AI. To start with, let's first look at some key trends and challenges in this industry. Traditionally, insurance company has been slow with adopting new technologies. This is mainly because of the long life cycle of the insurance products. But times are changing rapidly. Nowadays, the digital native generation have become the primary customer base. They ask for simpler and more efficient products. At the same time, insurance companies are facing challenges from inside and outside of the organization. From externally, there are stricter regulatory requirements asking for more documents. And there is unpredictable interest rates. The climate change and the pandemic is causing more severe and more frequent insurance claims. At the same time, internally, insurance companies are facing challenges with keep rising cost of maintaining IT systems. At the same time, they have pressure to cut the operational cost and reduce manual processing. And all these factors are driving the insurance companies to go through the digital transformation journey, aiming to internally become more efficient and externally to provide better products for their customer through innovation. Innovation is great, but implement innovation requires resource. Research shows that for ordinary organizations, they spend 80% of their resource on purely just maintaining existing IT systems, leaving only 20% for innovation. If we want to accelerate innovation, we must flip that ratio. That is precisely where cloud transformation comes in. Majority of the large enterprise, they undertake their cloud transformation journey through a phased approach. It starts with migration, and then the primary lift and shift, and then followed by modernization. Together, migration and modernization set a strong foundation for innovation. Even the initial stage, moving to the cloud by lift and shift, can bring significant benefits. It helps the customer's workload to be more scalable, more resilient. At the same time, give them access to purpose-built storage, compute, and networking. And once these initial concerns on infrastructure being addressed, customers started to see the tangible benefits. The initial success with lift and shift often leads to the modernization stage. Modernization focuses on re-architect application make it more cloud native, and better suits for the keep changing requirements. There are 3 key points in the modernization stage: microservices architecture, security and governance, and managed services. Most of the legacy IT systems are deeply coupled, making them vulnerable to cascading errors. That's the reason why customers want to decouple to get services. And then, based on that, they can keep innovate. The microservice architecture actually set a foundation to encourage continuous innovation, because now all the new features are developed as independent services, making it much easier to try new ideas and with lower risk. With governance and security, it's especially important for financial institutions, including insurance companies, as they operate under strict regulatory. So, as our goal is to shift more resource on innovation, it's even more important that we have that security foundation set up so that we can move fast and in a safe environment. And the last one, managed service. It's like an iceberg. The visible portion of implement an IT solution is just a small portion compared to the total effort required to implement it. The ongoing maintenance, monitoring, fix packing, scaling, these are creating a lot of challenge for organizations. And the managed service literally shift those heavy liftings to cloud provider, allows organization to more focus on their business objectives. We have seen customers address the 3 key points on AWS. With managed service, with microservices architecture, we have services and we have matured patterns. To implement it on AWS is far more manageable compared to an on-premise setup. With governance and security, we have native service like AWS Config, as well as solutions like Landing Zone that allows customer to set a strong security foundation, meet FSI requirements, and use these guardrails to allow you to innovate fast but safely. In AWS managed services, we've seen customers in this modernization journey keep adopting AWS managed services, keep shifting those efforts from managing the infrastructure to deliver value and the business impact. So now the customer have migrated and they have modernized. It's time to flip that crucial ratio we mentioned before, shifting from spending 80% of resource on the managing IT infrastructure to dedicating majority on innovation. This strategic shift positions insurance company perfectly to address the keep evolving industry trends. Talking about trends, we have to talk about the most transformative technology in this industry, generative AI. According to analysis, generative AI could create a substantial of $50 to $70 billion of value in this industry. That represents 1.8 to 2.8% of the total industry revenue. And this value creation spans across multiple different domains, from customer operation to sales and marketing, as well as software engineering. And we have seen customers who have migrated and modernized their core insurance system on AWS now started to innovating using generative AI. With that, I would like to invite Billy to the stage to share with us their practical experience of migration, modernization, and innovation. Welcome to the stage, Billy. Hand over to you.
Thanks, Rachel. So, just a little bit about HBF. If you are from Western Australia, you would have heard of us. If you are from another state, you probably haven't. So HBF, we're a health insurer, 5th largest, the Medibanks, the Bupas, etc. ahead of us. We're a not-for-profit organisation, so any money that we earn goes back into investment for our member base. And we are starting to expand around the kind of other states with 2 purchases in Queensland recently, Queensland Country Health Fund, as well as the insurance component of CUA Bank, which we've now rebranded as CU Insurance. And we're also expanding through the other aspects of the health chain with acquisitions in dental. We've started a number of dental practices, as well as a partnership in physio, and we're continually looking at that whole health ecosystem. So, why we're here today. HBF, we embarked on an ambitious transformation program. We had essentially spent far too little on technology over the years and had some 25 years of legacy that we had to replace. So what we had to do, again, if there's a lesson to be learned in transformations, it is not about going to your board and convincing them that you need to do something with technology. It's about aligning to your business strategy and ensuring that technology is a key pillar of that overall strategy. For HBF, our strategy was pretty clear 5 years ago. We essentially needed to expand geographically into the other states, and we've seen that with our recent acquisitions. And we also had to expand into that health ecosystem. We had a cost challenge as well. We had to drive down MER, management expense ratio, and create more efficiency across our business as a whole. And then we had to do something about that technology. So how we positioned this to our board was how essentially introducing these new technology platforms to power the ambitious strategy that we had as an organisation. And we got the funding to go ahead from there. Our CEO at the time, Simon, he had an analogy, and again, that's a useful thing to bring everyone back to why we're doing this. We called it the peloton. So anyone familiar with cycling? Essentially, we described this to our board that we had fell behind the peloton, that the lack of investment over 25 years had essentially seen HBF fall behind its competitors as well as the wider industry. And essentially we needed to spend money now to get back into that peloton to eventually get ahead as we go. And it was a useful thing to keep bringing us back to why we were actually doing this, especially when it started getting hard in later years. So what did we actually do? Again, I did say it was ambitious. We pretty much replaced everything, all of our member-facing technology. A phased delivery, incremental releases over many, many years. And essentially we did everything from our digital assets, that's our website, our mobile app, our member self-service portal, our entire cloud environment, our integration tier, where we replaced TIBCO, kind of legacy ESB, with .NET and AWS native integration services. We replaced our data and analytics platform, AWS across the board for ETL, and Snowflake as our ultimate data warehouse. We also replaced our CRM. We took a legacy Siebel application that was outdated and took it to Salesforce and Marketing Cloud. And lastly, we replaced our core insurance system if that wasn't enough. So we had to replace a 25, 30-year-old mainframe with a more modern Windows-based application. So all of that, you can imagine, was a fairly difficult exercise. 5 years in the making in the end, and a very successful cutover, which I'll kind of get into some of those aspects now. That was the technology part. We also wanted to change how we worked as an organisation, and we used to hear about this at these conferences a lot, but we did want to change to agile ways of working. Every project we ran at HBF over the years was waterfall, and we wanted to change that. So your typical Spotify kind of model with your tribes, squads, and chapters, we brought that in and we used our transformation program as the proof point of whether that worked for HBF moving forward. I am pleased to say that we believe it has, and we're now working in that way for every project and initiative we deliver moving forwards from here. So, some of the numbers. 3.1 million hours of work on this program as a whole. 500 plus people working on it at any one time. Usually it was about 300, but at the height of the transformation, around 2 years in, there was around 500 people working on the program. Not just technology people, obviously that's business representatives, as well as consultants and partners. We had 123 sprints. We went live on sprint 1, 2, 3, which was a bit symbolic for us when we eventually went live. 30,000 plus test cases, 18,000 hours of staff training across the board. Remember, everyone at HBF, there's 1,300 employees, and every one of those employees use these systems to service members on a daily basis. 62 hours of outage time for the cutover. I will get into that in a bit more detail, but that was kind of an unheard of in our industry, especially of a transformation of this size. Others in our industry had taken at least a week, maybe even 2 weeks to actually go live, and then several weeks of pain after that. We went with a pretty seamless cutover in 62 hours. Down on the Thursday night, taking claims again by first thing Sunday morning. And then 85% of our applications, we were entirely on-prem before we started this transformation program. There were 15% SaaS applications kicking around, and essentially we took everything to cloud in one go. 85% of applications now cloud-based, if not more. So, why we're here, I'll try and learn something. If we can help any organization in kind of some of the areas that went wrong. I've recently written a lessons learned paper, which is about 30 pages long for our board, but here's just some of the kind of key takeaways we had as part of that program. So choose your solutions and vendors very carefully. We did have a bit of a hiccup halfway through. We had to swap out our core insurance vendor. That part was not going particularly well, and that did set us back in the overall journey. So it really pays to spend time on that procurement exercise at the beginning. It's never too long. Make sure that you understand. And right now we're implementing a new HR system. We've taken some lessons there. We're making sure we go through a POC before we actually select and make the final selection of that vendor. Incremental delivery wherever possible, so incremental benefit realization is important. We went live first with a new mobile app. It's still #1 on the App Store in our industry. That went live around 4 to 5 years ago now. The data and analytics platform, we went live at the very beginning, Horizon 1, as well as our move to AWS Cloud for all of our development practices. Those successes helped us when things got tough with the CRMs and the core insurance systems of the world, when we can come back to what we had already successfully delivered. So it's so important to get some wins on the board early on in a program like this. MVP is key. Our business lovingly termed the phrase MLP, which stands for Minimum Lovable Product, which is really just another way of increasing the scope in the program. We didn't do well at that at all. We allowed more scope to creep in. We allowed the timeline to increase. So I would say MVP is there for a reason. Do not let anyone change that. Cloud infra. We naively thought we could start everything at once. We went in with our cloud development platform. We were building an AWS environment from the beginning. We thought we could do things like the mobile app build off to the side and bring them in later. We put so much pressure on our cloud team in those early days that we really should have phased that. We should have built our AWS platform out first and then started to bring the development. It sounds obvious now. At the time, we thought we could do all of this in parallel, and it really didn't work in the early days. Data migration. Absolutely crucial. You start that as early as possible. We spoke to a number of organizations through our particular journey who waited for data migration, and they started it later on in the game, and they found that was the thing that stopped them going live when they were actually ready technology-wise. So you can never start data migration early enough in a transformation of this size. And then de-risk the cutover wherever possible. I mentioned our core insurance pivot halfway through. It meant we had more going live at the end than we wanted. A new core insurance system, the CRM, the new website all went live in the final drop for us, which meant we had that kind of big bang style cutover at the end. And I'll go into detail now about a couple of key ways that we de-risked that process to make sure we had a successful cutover. So 2 things we did, and 2 things we're pretty proud of. And again, remember the 62 hours cutover I talked about? We had a concept of a dark launch. So a dark launch is when you take your production system, you take your systems to production early, and you run in a production state in parallel to your current systems. At least that's what it was for us. So we ended up taking our systems to prod around 12 months in advance. What that allowed us to do was essentially iron out all those typical creases you will get. It made us very, very comfortable in terms of deployments. And essentially when we got to that cutover weekend itself, we only had one small update to do, and our teams are very, very comfortable with the deployment process at that point. The other key thing is the Delta-driven data migration process. So essentially what we did there, again, dark launch concept as well. We took all of our data to the new solutions 1 week in advance. Every night from there, leading up to our cutover weekend, we migrated a single night's data to ensure that the final cutover itself, we only had around 4 hours of data migration to do. Again, these things lead to that short cutover window and minimal impact for our members at the end. So 2 really key things, and I advise anyone to do them. As I said, we've seen others in our industry who took weeks on this type of migration, and doing things like this essentially de-risks the whole process when you get to that final stage. So, from here, where are we? We believe we are now back in the peloton. So we do think that our new technology foundation's in place. Partners like AWS, partners like Salesforce, and the modern technology platform and architecture we have in place, we are ready to compete again. And that's where we are getting into pretty much the theme of the conference and some of our generative and agentic AI use cases. So, typical kind of model that we use, the value and feasibility model, we've looked at a number of use cases, and I've heard that a lot of the speeches over the last 2 days. We will have 1 million vendors coming at us all, I'm sure, trying to sell AI use cases to us. We have to pick the right use cases. There's no point in just trying this technology. It has to, again, back to our transformation program, be aligned to the strategy of the business and show real value. So see, here's some of the things HBF are working on at the moment. We have got development and testing support with assisted intelligence in progress. And we're working on chatbots. We haven't chosen AWS for that. We haven't chosen Salesforce, AWS's strategic partner, for our internal and external chatbot process, and we're working away on that. What we have chosen AWS for is something called claims straight-through processing, and I'll go into a bit of detail for that at the moment. So, existing process is entirely manual behind the scenes. If anyone's a private health insurance member, you will go onto your fund, whether that be HBF or others, and you will take a photo of a claim. This is when you can't use the standard industry things like high caps or Eclipse in a hospital. So you'll take the photo of the claim. In the background there, I want you to just think of a number of any of those claims that go straight through. So think of a percentage quickly. And this is at the moment. The number for us is 0%. Every single one of those photos that we take in our mobile app or our member portal is touched by a human being at some point. We do use OCR software, pretty dated OCR software at that. But every single one has to have a human being fill in a gap or put in some information before it gets processed into our core system. The technology is now in place where we can change that. So what have we done with AWS? So again, with our foundations now in place, we have all these services available to us now. We have been experimenting with our partner Mantle Group, and we've essentially building a shadow process for claims STP. We're using S3, we're using SQS to queue, etc. And then we're using a series of Lambdas and Bedrock and Textract. So Textract is an OCR tool from AWS, and we're using that. What Textract's really good at is extracting base information. It can read the text of these invoices easily. And what I should mention is every single one of these invoices is different. From any dental practice, physio practice, optometry, they are all completely different. There's zero standardization in our industry, unfortunately. So Textract's really good at extracting the information, but what Textract can't do, and what OCR software cannot do, is interpret what that information actually means. And that's where Bedrock and generative AI comes in for us. So what Bedrock is now allowing us to do is interpret those invoices, pick a provider number, pick a member number, pick a procedure, and process that to our back-end core insurance API. And we are seeing a lot of success in that process. So that's what we're doing. Again, learnings from our transformation program. We're calling this one a shadow process. We have deployed this in staging. We are now reconciling to our production system on a daily basis. We are making sure that this is as accurate as we want it to be. It has holes at the moment. We are steadily improving the model as we go. And when we are comfortable, we will stop that from being a shadow process and we will take over the process for HBF. So some numbers around that. Without doing very much at all, we processed the documents, around 400 invoices in our POC process with Mantle Group. And essentially we've seen a 73% what we call a perfect match success rate. That is huge, from 0% to 73% in one hit. Dollars-wise, it works out around $1 million a year in savings for us from a third party. That's not HBF staff, that's a third party that we use. But it'll be around $1 million a year. And we have several phases of this program to continually improve on this and automate more parts of the journey. But this part, in its own right, is worth around $1 million a year in savings to us. So we're in the middle of that at the moment. We're in the middle of our chatbots and other use cases, but just showing that transformation can be worth it. Before, we didn't have that AWS platform in place. We didn't have Salesforce. We didn't have any of the modern technology where we can take advantage of the agentic AI use cases. Now we do. We're pretty happy with the end result at the end. Right now, thank you. I'm going to hand back to Rachel, and she'll close this out. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to end this session with a powerful quote from Andy Jassy, Amazon CEO. Invention requires two things: the ability to do loads of experiments, and at the same time not having to live with the collateral damage caused by failed experiments. So today, through the sharing from HBF's story, we can tell that the key to embracing the cloud transformation is not just about technology. It's more about to set up that foundation to encourage continuous innovation. With that, thank you for your attention. For people who want to learn more, this QR code will link you with more generative AI use cases in financial services industry. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Billy and Rachel, for that awesome session. For those in the room and online, please do take some time to review the session using the AWS Summit app. If you have any questions for those in the room, Billy and Rachel will be sticking around for a few minutes. Feel free to reach out to them. Thank you.